And again, if you're just joining us, welcome. I think we're about ready to go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, thank you all and welcome back. I know many of you have just come back from lunch, so hopefully, I'm really excited to have you guys here. You are in for a really awesome afternoon of USD sessions, starting off with our Beyond Hollywood Careers panel. So, as we've heard in the morning, USD is really changing and innovating new areas like 3D Gaussian splatting and opening up new domains such as physical AI. And one thing that we are seeing is a lot of the 3D skills that you may have learned for other domains have an opportunity to really change the game with physical AI as well. So today, we're joined by an incredible panel of experts from leading companies across the space that will share how you can unlock new career paths in fields like digital twins, AI, and robotics with your 3D skills. So with that, I'd like to welcome Ashley Goldstein, who is our lead technical marketing engineer at NVIDIA, and will be moderating this session. And she will take it away and introduce all the rest of our speakers. Thank you.
Is this on? Oh, it is on. Welcome, everybody. So nice to be here. This is my second year doing this jobs panel, and I'm really excited to talk with 3 more groundbreaking industry professionals. The industry of graphics has really changed so much, as many of you know. I know many of you have quite a few ribbons attached to your SIGGRAPH badges, so you've been here quite some time. And when I was asked to moderate this panel again, I was really excited to be able to tell the stories of 3 more people who have been a part of this change. Our skills in rendering, simulation, technical art, and visual effects have made movies and games a very immersive and emotional experience. And in areas like digital twins, robotics, and artificial intelligence, those skills are now powering everything from smart factories to autonomous vehicles. So let's go ahead and get started to chat with our panelists and hear more about their journey to where they are now. Before I start asking my questions, I would like the panelists to introduce themselves. So Nick, I'll start with you. If you can share your name, where you work, and a little bit about what you do, and then we'll just go down the table.
Sure. Hi, I'm Nick Burkhardt. I work at Meta. I work on the Avatar and Horizon team, so I deal with digital characters. But previously I was at Disney Animation. I've worked at DreamWorks, at Rhythm and Hues, doing visual effects and feature animation and characters.
I'm Gilles. I've been at NVIDIA for 4 years now, working the Spatial Intelligence Lab and High Fidelity Physics team, where we do physics, but also all kind of large-scale data structures for digital twins, robotics, things like that. And most of us actually come from a VFX background for many companies, but myself, I worked at Weta starting 15 years ago, something like that, with a few back and forth with academia, and doing a lot of simulation R&D for all things like close air for and all of the things beforehand.
All right, and I'm Ryu. I work at Aurora Innovation, which is a company that develops the Aurora driver, which is like an autonomous, self-driving brain. We have trucks in Texas that are driving, alone now. We'll have cars soon. I started my career in VFX, and then I went for quite a bit of time in animation. I did a bit of games, and now I'm here.
Wonderful. Thank you all for those introductions. I'm really glad to have you all here. Our conversation is going to be really fulfilling, and I think a lot of everyone is going to get a lot out of your journey. So I want to start talking about a little bit about the original career paths that you all have. So Ryu, I'm going to start with you. You have a long history here in the industry. You started off doing simulations and graphics with CPUs. Yes. Must have been such a revolutionary time to be a part of that technology then. What made you start exploring that industry, and what did you want to be when you first started?
I think my first kind of contact with 3D CG was when watching movies like Jurassic Park, Terminator 2, which were kind of the first of their kind with that, the CG element, computer graphics element was a big part of the movie. And I think that's also when I also started to buy CineFX, which is, I don't know if some of you remember, but that old, paper magazine. But the moment I really started to do 3D was when I found that we had a silicon graphics at the university lab. It was a really, expensive big machine that, not easy to have access to. And also at that time, I started writing my own, ray tracer, at home on my Pentium, one core. Takes hours to render a Cornell box, but that was fun. And then I think I sent a couple of images that I did with that to a company called Buff in France, which, at that time, they were doing already Hollywood movies, and it was really rare at that time. So I sent my portfolio, which is, was really just a couple of images, but, and then I got an internship there, and that's how I started.
Amazing. I will not tell you how old I was when Jurassic Park came out. That would be my promise to you. Nick, I want to ask you something similar. I was really blown away by all the different movies you've contributed to, like my favorite, Zootopia, where I saw that you made the hippo's belly jiggle. Very interesting. So my question to you is, what skills were you excited to use when you were contributing to those movies? And how did your work with hair and fur interest you?
Yeah, so I've always been very interested in in just programming technology and just animation. And so that's really led me down a path of just curiosity about how this all works. Because when you see these movies, it is such a black box. You don't know how these things are deconstructed or how people make these things. But when you start slowly picking it apart, and that really was my process, slowly picking it apart, you get these threads. Oh, it's Python, and you start pulling on that and learning a little bit more about Python. Oh, this is C++, you kind of jump into that. And for me, I kept learning, going deeper and deeper, and then there were some opportunities along the line where in Zootopia, we had just started Zootopia at Disney, and it was a movie that had so much fur, and we had not done fur as a studio since Bolt, and that was like one character. And so you had a city of fur, and it had all of these challenges, and one of them was motion. And I was like, I am going to hone in on this motion, and I'm going to use these skills that, I was slightly dangerous with C++. I was still an artist, but I was dangerous with C++ to build up a workflow. And I did. And, I had a rough time, but I learned a lot, and I had some really generous engineers along the way that helped me. But at the end, we built up this really nice workflow for artists to control fur, to inject secondary motion, do crazy stuff, and that was all driven by this curiosity and just wanting to pick things apart and understand how does this do this? How does this all come together?
That's actually a really good point. I think a lot of us here, especially, we are constantly learning, and the industry is constantly changing. So just adapting to those skills and picking things up to experiment is a good thing to know. And that kind of leads me into my next question. When we first met to plan this panel, I said that we aren't industry unicorns. And what I meant by that was that while it seems unique that we all jumped from M&E to industrial simulation and digital twins, it's actually all not that all uncommon. In fact, a lot of people that I work with at NVIDIA come from movies and gaming. And Gilles, you are one of them. You came to NVIDIA from Weta, where you developed a multi-physics simulation framework, very impressive. And can you talk a little bit about how you made the move to NVIDIA? What interested you about what you saw at NVIDIA and the opportunity that was for you?
Yeah. We've spent many years building this new multi-physics framework called Loki at Weta, and the goal was to be able to do the avatar sequel. So very complex characters, very complex environments, a lot of shots. And finally we were up to a point where it started to feel somewhat ready. Start to see a good adoption in production, after all these years of research. For me, it's sounded like a good point in time to try to look at other things. There was quite a few new things coming at SIGGRAPH at this time, so we are seeing a lot of more GPU-based simulation. Machine learning was starting to take a big place, and in our case at Weta, it was still all CPU-based, because that's what was render farm was made of mostly. And GPUs didn't have the huge amount of memory that they have now at the time. So yeah, it looked like a good place to be able to be immersed in AI and GPUs was obviously NVIDIA, and actually my former boss, Ken Misses, already made the switch a few years earlier. So when I reached out to him, he pitched out like Omniverse, which was this kind of digital twins for industrial application, and it seemed like a very nice opportunity to learn about new domains of application for this kind of multi-physics solvers, and potentially to impact a lot more industries and a lot more people down the line. So yeah, that's what made the switch.
Yeah, that's really great. I really love that you contribute to this really important framework that helped such big movies like Avatar, and at the same time, you've had the wherewithal to pay attention to what's going on in the industry and contribute to these research papers and jump on the trains that you see that are moving. So really interesting. And Ryu, I want to come back to you on this topic as well. You also worked on movies like Cars 2, Finding Nemo, Monsters University. Again, I will not tell you how old I was when those came out. And just to name a few of those, you were also, so now you're working at Aurora. You're helping out with leading the simulation for autonomous driving trucks, which very also impressive to see those. I mean, I saw Waymos in San Francisco, and that blew my mind. I can't imagine what it's going to be like to see big trucks on the street as well. What skills do you have, or did you see from your past industry that you think your current industry is hungry for?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak for the whole industry, but what I'm seeing around me, so there's a need for synthetic data. I don't think that's news, but. And so we need to create a lot of images, just that the audience is not, entertainment and people anymore. It's machine learning. But we still need to create those images. And there's always a need for good, graphics engineers. And at least what we are looking for is always people who have the industry, production experience, because that's where you you can acquire some, problem-solving, instinct, or but when you're in production, it's whatever needs to be done to get that shot, ready or done, right? And so that kind of trait is really good. At the same time, if a person can also have a very good understanding of the fundamental skills, like math or whatever that is, basically stats or just being a very good C++ programmer. That's great, because that's what's needed when we need to develop software that's not just for one shot. It needs to last and be robust and all that. I would just also add that that's the technical side of things, but there's another side of the equation, and it's really the communication skills. That you get, I don't know if people realize, but just being in production, there's a tech side, the engineers, and then you have the artist, and we have to work together to make that big project, which is a movie. We don't always speak the same language, right? So someone says something, we understand something else, but we get that muscle basically. And so nowadays I don't work with artists that much anymore, but we do talk to experts in their fields, like we have LiDAR, radar, hardware people, and so we need to be able to explain what the simulation can do to help them. What is difficult for us to do, or very easy, and at the same time we also need to talk to them to understand what they're doing and what is the exact problem they're trying to solve. So that aspect, I think it's big. It's difficult to quantify, right? But I feel that a lot of people coming from production, they have that, so that's a plus.
Yeah, what I hear from that is soft skills. I think we always want, what's the next new program I need to learn? What's the next new language I need to jump onto? The next new big thing. But these soft skills of communication and working in teams and being able to brain dump onto somebody else and they understand what you're doing, that's really important. So I also recently chatted with students at the Savannah College of Art and Design. And one of the biggest questions I got from these students was how what they were learning at school could be applied to other industries like digital twins, like autonomous vehicles. So Nick, I'm going to be asking you this question. You went to Columbus College of Art Design for 3D animation. So what skills did you learn at school or did you get to refine in the movie industry that you found to be the most transferable for what you do now at Meta with avatars?
Yeah, so yes, I went to Columbus College of Art and Design. I'm an animation major, but the majority of my time at Columbus College of Art and Design was fine arts, 2D animation. I was really interested in 2D animation, and a lot of what I got out of that was, I can draw pretty well, not really well, but pretty well. But I can also figure out what's important and what's not. And that's, when you start composing a painting, when you start figuring out what you're drawing, it's very critical to figure out what's important to communicate, what's not. And I think that is a skill that's kind of helped me along my journey in my career. Because there's so many things, there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of things that you can choose to focus on when you start engaging in work. But a lot, if it doesn't ladder up to the things that are, really important to your organization or to whatever metrics that you're being accountable for, then maybe it doesn't matter. And maybe that's not the thing you should really be focusing on, or maybe you focus on it just a little bit. And so having that kind of litmus test and that crucible of understanding what's important, I think is, one of the things I got out of this. The other thing is the culture of critique. Art school is really, you are immersed in critique. It's both receiving critique, but also giving critique. And I think critique starts at art school, but then you refine it throughout your career because you understand how to communicate and how to give a critique in a way that somebody is actually able to receive it. So again, communication, I think is, incredibly important, especially when you're talking to people who are from very different backgrounds and may not have the exact same incentives as you have when you're working together on a project.
Yeah, absolutely. I went to school for photography, and I remember the professor always saying, you can't just say, I like. You have to say why you like something, and being able to have that communication so people understand what your words mean is a great point to comment on. Again, back to the soft skills, right? All right, so next thing I want to tackle is imposter syndrome. How many of us have struggled with imposter syndrome? I wrote a whole article on it and published it to LinkedIn, so you can read about how I've struggled with it publicly. So for me, as a person who went to art school for photography and then becoming an engineer, it's something I'm very familiar with. I work with a lot of very smart people who have been in the industry for quite some time. They have a degree in computer science, sometimes all the way up to a PhD in computer science. And when we were talking before the panel, Nick, you had mentioned this was something you also have experienced. So can you share about a time that you felt imposter syndrome and what triggered it?
Yeah, so when I started, I've been at Meta for about 3.5 years, but when I started, I was transitioning from feature animation into this big tech company. And they are very different cultures. In feature animation, everybody is very focused on making perfect pixels for a movie. At Meta, you have a lot of different people that you're engaging with, and I felt, these people, everybody is smarter than me, and I'm doing the things that I was doing in feature animation, but I'm surrounded by just people who know way more than me about these big architectural systems, these big cloud-based processing systems. And that lasted about 6 months until I realized, I'm like, wait, I know way more about production than all of them. Or I know way more about production than a lot of them, and I actually need to, insert myself much more into this to make this entire process. At that point, it was Meta avatars move much more smoothly, and to scale to the places that everybody was really dreaming to scale to. And that got me over my imposter syndrome.
I love it. Just having confidence in yourself, speaking kindly to yourself. You wouldn't say something to your friend like, oh, yeah, of course you have imposter syndrome because you can't live up to it. You would want to speak to yourself in the same way you would speak to your friend, be very encouraging. I've had a similar experience. And speaking of confidence, Jill, you are someone that I see as having so much confidence and maybe not struggling with imposter syndrome. Perhaps I'm wrong. Would you be so kind to share how do you remind yourself that you do belong?
Yeah, I mean, see, I'm not super sure of that. Like, not even sure why I'm here. Like, I'm here to talk here. But I think, when you're working on something, it's easy to see all the flaws, all the limitations of what you're doing, and everything like seems obvious. It seems simple because you spend so much time on it. And I really agree with you. What you just said before, you really need to try to have a more external point of view and see your work like an external person will see it, or how you would look at the work of an external person. And that, really helps getting out of this mindset and starting to have probably get out of this syndrome. And I remember like the first time I started in VFX, so coming more like from an academia background, I was really feeling like a dead weight on production because you were doing some small research things but not actually contributing much, mostly like wasting TD time because asking them to try all little things that didn't really work all the time. And it's only like the first time that I saw like a shot in the theater. It was some very minor thing. I think it was the first of it, this little hedgehog that was animating the spikes just a little better. That really felt like, I'm indeed useful, indeed belonging to this community. And it's a bit the same thing, when going from VFX to like more serious industries, when it's very easy to think that you've only been making like shiny pixels, but some statistic I've heard recently is that if you look at SIGGRAPH statistics, most of the citations do not actually come from people in the computer graphics community, but actually from other industries. So when you're making the switch, you're just removing, the middleman and maybe more directly encouraging adoption of those very useful graphics techniques.
You said serious industries, but I would say showing a blowing up scene in avatars, that's pretty serious. But I like that you're saying seeing your work validated, the techniques that you're working on being moved through the industry. It's a good way to remind yourself that, yes, the work that you're doing is important and you do belong. So we also talked a little bit about transferable skills, and I'm really curious if any of you found skills that you were surprised were transferable from the industry you were in before and the industry you're in now. For me, I was surprised that my teaching skills, I used to teach middle school art to a bunch of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. I was surprised that when I became an engineer, the need to write technical documentation and people to understand what I was talking about, that was transferable from being a teacher. So Gilles, I'm gonna pass back to you. What skills surprised you?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's super surprising, but really, I think we have the pragmatic mindset that we have in the VFX industry is super useful. So we have these very strong deadlines. You really need to ship something at some point. And like Nick was saying a bit earlier, it really makes you need to look at what is important, what is not, what sort of compromise you can do. So for instance, like in physics, that maybe you want to have the emerging behaviors, but you really need to only put the ingredients that are needed for this. Otherwise, you will have something that is way too expensive or not easily controllable by artists. And you want to keep being able to iterate quickly because, adapt to change, because change upstreams are unavoidable. And I think we have like a very well ingrained way of doing this in VFX, which is, you start from a reference video, something that was captured in the real world maybe, and then you estimate like what you need to reproduce, what are the gaps with your current technique, and you can iterate this validation loop to really cover some things that will de-risk your strategy to get the thing delivered. You can you're not afraid to using very ad hoc strategies because ad hoc implementation are very useful sometimes. I think this pragmatic but anchored in reality way of doing things is something that's very easy to transfer to the industry. So it may not be like videos, it can be skills like in robotics. But yeah, actually, I think VFX has this thing quite figured out. And maybe something like on the more creative side, Nick mentioned that he was a good drawer. So that's the opposite of me. I'm super bad at anything of creative skills. But I'm very, very happy that we have people in the teams that can, create assets that are a bit more complex than a sphere and a bunny, that can do nice materials, nice lighting, so things that are readable, that will really, really legitimize the impact of the demos that you can make. And yeah, it's incredibly helpful in general to have people with these kind of skills in even if our industries.
Great. Ryu, can I ask you the same question?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm going to echo what Jill said, but I think all the, maybe sometimes we don't realize at first, but it's not the practical things that we're doing that are asked. Like, for example, if you know a software that's great for your current job, but you might not use the same one. So, but it's fine because the software that's not the skill. The skill is you being able to adapt to a new software, or you have an efficient workflow in whatever Maya, but you need to go into Houdini. So you can't port that, but the method you use to find that optimized workflow, or how you made your work or day-to-day work more efficient, that's portable, and that's kind of what we should think about when we change industries, because that fundamental basically the basis is applicable in different places.
Yeah. All right, Nick, I'm going to ask you the same question. What skills did you have that were transferable and surprised you?
To me, it's really kind of like storytelling. Like being able to talk to somebody in a way that they can understand the thing that you're saying, and you can communicate the need that or the alignment that you're trying to drive at. There's so many times where at Meta, I talk to people from totally different backgrounds than me, and there's you have to create a story that they can understand, that they can ingest without having to totally immerse them in all of the nitty-gritty of computer graphics. Because there's a lot of industrial insider knowledge that just is totally foreign to everybody, to a lot of outsiders or researchers, or somebody who's coming from a web development background, and they have a lot of that too. That they have to bridge the gap with me as well. And so there's about an hour or something that I spend with these new partners where we just talk about, try to figure out what is our common ground, what do they understand, what can I teach them in that hour, and it's really just about telling a story. Because if I'm not telling a story, then my partner is probably not listening to me, and they're probably pretty bored with what I'm saying. And so I have to be engaging, and I have to make sure that they're paying attention to what we need.
I hope no one was coming here to learn that they had to learn a new piece of software and not go home and practice their charisma in the mirror. The best advice I ever got when I was learning to be an artist and move on into engineering was to make sure that my portfolio was very polished. And that allowed me to pay attention to detail. I ended up taking that into my engineering role, and I use it in my everyday life, both as a people manager and as a lead tech marketing engineer. So I'd like to ask each of you, what advice did you get that could help others looking for a career change? Nick, I'll start with you, and we'll just go down the table.
I guess the advice that I got was play well with others. Always play well with others. That is I got that phrase when I was in college, when I was in art college, and it has served me well throughout my entire career. It's such a small industry. All of these industries are very small. Mm-hmm. So, and when you bump into everybody at SIGGRAPH here, you just remember, like, I'm glad I played nice with others.
Yeah, absolutely. Jill?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit the same, like be seen as a person that's reliable, so you can reliably deliver things. And yeah, I can think this can seem through a variety of ways, like you said. It can be GitHub, it can be a portfolio, it can be presenting at a conference like this, or putting some demo online or anything. But yeah, having this being recognized for being able to deliver, I think will make the job of hiring managers a lot easier, like when they want to vouch for you.
Great. Ryu?
Yeah, I think it's the you just have to trust that you have the skills basically to transfer, being open, to adapt to new things. One thing I would say is that, when I speak to people who did the switch, from whatever animation to tech or whatever that is, people who are doing great in their previous industry, they are doing great in the new industry. And often they say, "Oh, I wish I switched sooner." And I rarely hear people saying, "Oh, I don't like what I'm doing now. I want to go back." So, yeah, I think I don't think there's anything to prepare or anything. It's just take a step back and look at what your skills are and just go.
Is this the reason why you don't have imposter syndrome?
It's not that I don't have. I mean, there is. I do. When you change. I mean,
I'm just poking fun.
No. But when you change teams or companies or countries, or there's always a moment where you arrive in this new place and you're kind of floating, right? You don't. It's like, oh, am I the right person to be here? I don't think there's. I think that hits everybody. It's just you just need to do your work, and after the first project, the second one, that feeling goes away. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
That's great advice. Wonderful. Each of you have really been in the industry for quite some time, both in media and entertainment and in digital twins. You've made significant impacts to both. In media and entertainment, your skills in simulation and rendering brought movies to life. Now you're doing the same for immersive experiences in VR, robotics, and autonomous vehicles. So before I close this out and we start to take questions from the audience, my last question to each of you is, what industry or jobs would you recommend for anyone that wants to follow your path? Ryu, we'll start with you and then come back the other way.
I mean, for rendering, I've been doing rendering, so that's kind of my focus. So I would say, again, now there's still a big need for making synthetic data, and the quality that's expected from those, simulation is just going up. Is going to increase. So people who have been doing, super high quality computer graphics for movies and all that, that's precious. And the pool of talent is not that big. And again, it's not like people who are just good at that. It's like people who are good at that and good communicators and just, can become a good colleague. The overlap of all that, the pool of people is not that big. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you. Gilles?
Yeah, maybe I will evade the question because I don't think I have a good answer for that. I think you really want to start with something where you will be able to make an impact, something you're passionate about, where you have some curiosity, because it's, if you are able to deliver projects that will get you recognized, that will make then a lot easier to switch the industry. And I mean, in my case, that's mostly been the case. You start doing like this, projects under the radar, so out of curiosity, and then at some point they pick up, and this what finally get you recognized and allow you to, know the to transfer from one industry to the other. Like you were saying earlier, I think as long as you find something where you're good at, it will be a lot easier to be good at in other domains. So yeah, I don't have anything in particular to recommend, but yeah, something that you will be curious about is probably the best thing.
Nick?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's kind of the biggest thing I see coming up is like synthetic data generation, because they are effectively giant CG pipelines. And if you understand pipelines, if you understand how to scale production, how to how to generate procedural data, then you're pretty well set up for kind of jumping into the fray for these kinds of jobs.
Yeah, I mean, we can just say that you're all here and you're on the path already. So thank you so much, panelists, for joining us today. Nick from Meta, Gilles from NVIDIA, and Ryu from Aurora. Give them all a round of applause for coming up here. We do have time for questions. If anyone would like to raise their hand, maybe we can pass you a mic, because I believe this is being recorded, and you can ask your question.
I would like to ask about habit to learn new things. When you have free time, what would you like to do? Learn more about your work, or not related, the things not related to your work? I want to ask.
Would anyone like to take that? Basically, the question is, what do you like to do in your free time that's either related to your work or not related to your work? I can start. I've been creating an iOS application in my free time just because I felt like learning it. So, and then sometimes I just walk my dogs.
I've got 2 kids that keep me incredibly busy, but if I
No free time for you.
But if I do magically find free time, it's very much the same, where I'm tinkering with things, whether it's like creating new applications, kind of discovering, well, how do I interact with with Claude Code or something like that. That's I'm always kind of like poking at things, and then somehow that ends up influencing what I do at work. But I wouldn't call it work, though. It's not really adjacent.
Yeah, it's something that you're more doing for fun. And if it happens to relate, that's great, right? Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be the same for me. I mean, there's been point in my life where I was doing stuff like in my free time, but no, with family, yes, that's make it a lot harder. Don't remember what was.
Ryu, do you have anything to comment on it?
Yeah, I mean, I try to not be in front of a computer, but if there are, work-related stuff, I still, like SIGGRAPH stuff, I still follow things, that you should be able to do, but sometimes you don't have the time to do it during, work hours. Mm-hmm. Try to catch up with, stuff.
My favorite engineer joke is the engineer to goose farmer pipeline, getting away from a computer as far as you can once you retire. So I relate to that as well. Sometimes I just sit on my couch and knit for a few hours, just not stare at a screen. Any other questions? Yes, who has a mic right here?
I have a question about loose connections and how you got these excellent career opportunities you have now. To what degree could you maybe describe to us and share, like, how you're able to take your skills and interest in the world and interest in the technology and get into roles that seemed kind of maybe far afield or adjacent? And I imagine there was a relationship at some point that really enabled this to move forward in some way. So if you could share some details about that, I think it would be additive.
So I work at Meta and I work on avatars. But when I came to avatars, they were very interested in rebuilding their avatar pipeline to scale out into bring in more features. They were working on kind of an old architecture that was very difficult to kind of to build out brand new features. But what got me into this was when I was working at Disney Animation, we had just switched from a pipeline that was like a decade old into a USD pipeline, and that was on Encanto. And so I was able to, to me, this was, during this interview with Meta, to me, it was really a problem. They kind of described this problem to me. It was a problem of scaling, and I was like, oh, this is like running 10 productions at the same time instead of like at Disney, we were kind of like 3 productions, maybe a couple of shorts. And it's just really a problem of scale at that point, and it's a problem of like data management. And I think that's really what got me into the door. I was able to, take what I was currently doing, which was like, hey, we just redid this brand new pipeline in this fancy USD into, why don't we use USD in this other application? And I think they were really interested in that.
Yeah, I think the connection are quite relatively easy to see, at least for us, like in physics, like the laws of physics are mostly the same, like between VFX and the real world. So there's, yeah, seeing the application is really there, and a lot of people are already, there's a very porous boundaries between VFX and other tech companies and things like that. So you will probably know people that have already in the industry that you want to look at. And yeah, if you build a good relationships, that does really help.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the connections, have soft skills. I mean, when I moved to Pixar, so I've been doing ray tracing for a long time, and I knew in rendering for some reason there's a lot of French people, so we have a kind of connections there, and so there was that one person at Pixar, where they were doing the shift from rays to ray tracing, physically based and whatnot. So he pinged me like, hey, do you want to come, help? And so yeah, I will. So that's how I got to Pixar, and same now with Aurora. The person who started the whole simulation group that we're in was my office mate at Pixar, wow. And so it started like that. So I think you don't know what's going to lead to what, but if you have one couple of skills that you're strong in, or areas of interest, you never know what opportunity will come up out of that. So I would say just be conscious of those things, and just wait and see, I guess.
Great, yeah.
Very cool, thank you.
I think we had a question back down this way. Dio, can you pass it back?
Hi, so I'm an undergraduate student studying computing science, and before coming to university, I have a lot of training and background in architecture, art, and design. So I'm really interested in how you guys are sharing experiences, the transition from art, more artistic to technical. And I just maybe want you guys' take or advice on looking for me opportunities in the future where in the tech industry where I can utilize both my more of the design and the technical computing science skills, looking for opportunities and how I can showcase my background to future employees or just talking to people.
That's a good question. I think it's a bit of a tough one. Anyone want to tackle it?
So, I mean, traditionally, right, I think a show reel is actually a really great means to showcase what you can do. And I remember the show reel the demo reel that I moved into to Meta with. It was really me kind of like doing a lot of different experiments with characters and with Unreal Engine. I had worked with a group in London that I had groomed a werewolf character, and they were I showed this werewolf character being driven by mocap in live on this set in London, and just figuring out like where can you showcase your skills in in interesting and creative ways. And it doesn't need to be a totally complete idea, it doesn't need to be an application that you've totally shipped, even though that's really good, but it could be something that really sparks interest, because at that point you kind of just want to get your foot in the door. And I think like experimenting with technology and just being trying to connect things together is a really great way to kind of showcase that.
It's difficult, right? Because sometimes we're looking for a profile, mm-hmm. And so if you don't take all the cases, you might not get any interest, but. I would say if you have one strong skill and many other stuff around, that helps. Like Nick was saying, if you experimented with something and you have an application, even if it's not something polished or commercial or anything, that will be a difference between two candidates that have kind of the same profile, but this person is also interested in this and that, and so that will. When we get a lot of applications, if we're talking about getting a job, those small things that could feel like irrelevant are actually we look at those. So I think it's always good to have multiple skills or being able to have multiple hats, that's something that's useful. Again, even if it feels like but it doesn't matter for that position I'm applying for, sometimes it does.
Yeah, I think it's good to curate your portfolio for the job you're applying to as well. When I was transitioning to more of like the tech industry, I had a career coach at NYU who would look at my resume and they would look at my portfolio and I'd say, hey, I'm applying to this job. And we would craft that portfolio and that piece of resume for that job. It's a lot of work, but it does end up being worth it. And I also will pass back some advice that I just got at the Women in Tech Birds of a Feather. Someone said that she applied to Blue Sky Studios 5 times, and it took 5 times to be accepted. So don't take rejection personally. Just keep improving what you're working on, keep exploring, and keep putting yourself out there.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I think we have time for maybe one more question right there.
My question is directed more towards Gil. So I just wanted to understand from your perspective, like, when it comes down to physics and modeling the entire, physical world, what is the current state of, pins? And if I had to, kind of contribute something to a library, which NVIDIA is currently, building on in terms of physics simulation, how do I go ahead about doing that? And since you're from the robotics, domain, what is the, bottleneck when it comes down to, robotic simulation? I hear, synthetic data all the time, but I'm pretty sure there is a cap to that, and, I would like to know, where it's headed to.
Yeah, no, there's still, many gaps, especially, in sim-to-real transfer. So I don't work personally, on robots themselves, but what I hear a lot is that dexterous manipulation in particular is a very challenging problem at the moment. So having a good way to model also the collisions, being able to scale things. There are many problems, and everything where you have more complex physics. Imagine you have a phase change. Imagine you have multiple materials. So how do you? Another big problem is how do you initialize all those materials from a scene? Because if you when you do a simulation for CE and VFX, you have a good idea about the materials in the various parts of the scene. But if you're a robot and you're just discovering your environment, you have no ideas about that. So there's a lot of stuff about combining all these vision pipelines and reconstruction pipeline and adding physics on top of that. That is emerging, and that will be very useful in the future. So that's something that you want to look at. I'm sure there will be quite a lot of impact. And maybe to go back on the previous question as well. So I know at least one example of I wrote someone that was super good, but really the big thing that made him stand out is that he was just creating a small ODD plugin to add some, to create a new physics effect and push that on LinkedIn, and that got viral. And that's that's really the thing that can make you stand out from the crowd in terms of application.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this session. I hope to see you again next year at LAC Graph and later on tonight at the OpenUSD Developer Meetup. Thank you.